It's time to talk some state championship football. Hello, everybody. Terry Bennett here on the Class 3A Division II State Championship Preview Show, brought to you by Power Plus Mouthguard and L4FR Clothing, right here on the LSG Sports Network, as we've got ourselves an interesting matchup of Gunner versus Poth, and we're here to talk about it. If this is your first time listening to one of our state championship preview shows, so what we're going to do today is talk this Class 3A Division II Championship, Gunner versus Poth. It's going to be me. It's going to be Grant Goodwin of Sideline to Sideline, Coach X of Sideline to Sideline, Chris Daly, who owns the site, Matt Diggs, award-winning sports writer. We're also going to have the head coach of Gunner, Coach Jake Fizzell, all right here on this action-packed show. We're going to have Road to States. I love doing this. I love this job. I love this week in this job. It's crazy. It's show after show after show, but I absolutely enjoy it, and I just enjoy watching the state championship football. What better place to be this week than at the stadium or in front of the TV watching the games, and it's just such a blast. And I think this is an interesting matchup. You've got a true matchup of styles, a speed and athleticism of Gunner, the size and power and defensive battle of Poth. And I think this is an interesting matchup. And I think we're going to have a lot of fun listening to I like to say, our quote, so-called experts of the website here. But first, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we'll start things off with the head coach of Gunner. And we'll do that when we come back on the Class 3A Division II State Championship Preview Show on the LSG Sports Network.
Hey, football fans, Christmas is right around the corner. We have the perfect gift for your high school football fan in your life. Friday Night Legends, the board game. With Friday Night Legends, you can play the greatest high school teams of all time against each other based on their real stats. That means you can play the 1989 Odessa Permian Panthers of Friday Night Lights fame against the 2017 Mater Day team and really see who's the better team. Or what about Peyton Manning's Newman High School in New Orleans against Trevor Lawrence's Cartersville, Georgia team? There are thousands of teams in the library from all over the United States. Get your copy of Friday Night Legends at BoardGameLegends.com and be the hero of Christmas morning.
Merry Christmas, George!
Terry Bennett back here on this Class 3A Division II State Championship Preview Show, brought to you by Power Plus Mouthguard. Find them online at powerplusmouthguard.com. If you have a kid that's playing a physical sport, or if you yourself are playing a physical sport, check out Power Plus Mouthguard. The data and research proves that over 6,500 athletes who have used Power Plus Mouthguard, the concussion rate is only 0.2%. That is absolutely amazing. And they do it simply by aligning your jaw and allowing oxygen to continue to flow through your body. Cheap mouth guards do not do that. So check out Power Plus Mouthguard. And not only that, they're still affordable, and they're great quality. So check them out, and we do appreciate them being a sponsor of these playoff preview shows. All right. I sat down and talked with the head coach of Gunner, Coach Jake Fizzell, about the season, about this senior class, and, of course, about this state matchup against Poth. Here is Coach Fizzell of Gunner. All right, Coach. Well, first off, congratulations. Let's start with last week. You face a very familiar foe in Canadian, and in one heck of a game, y'all have a drive in the fourth quarter that, in my opinion, kind of defined your season. What were your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I mean, first off, just really proud of our kids and all of our coaches, putting the work in, not only this past week, but, all off season, the summer and all football season. And, I think that game was just a culmination of all that hard work. And, everyone was tested in that game and, especially the players and for them to make the plays and to come out on top, it just shows a lot of, just reveals their grit and their character and shows what they're all about.
And I think it also speaks to the leadership. You have a senior class that has basically lived in Arlington, and I think you are like 65-4 with that senior class, the likes of Ethan Sloan and such. Tell me about that senior class and what it's meant to the program.
Yeah, I'd say they're obviously they're a talented group, but really, it's their leadership has just been tremendous. It's a great class. It's been a class that we've known for a long time. That's obviously they've been successful all the way up, and right now they more than anything they've done just a fantastic job of leading us all year, and they do things the right way, they practice the right way, and because of that they're able to hold other players accountable, and we're going to need that kind of leadership on Thursday.
All right, well, let's talk about Thursday. You take on a team in Poth that is very defensive, and let's just say they're very big. What are your thoughts on the Pirates?
Yeah, they are. I mean, they've got great size. I mean, they're on the other side of the field. They're definitely they're going to look good in pregame. That's for sure. I mean, they've got big kids. They've got athletes all over the place. They're as physical of a team as we've played, and we've played some pretty physical teams this year. So. They don't they don't disguise a whole lot. I mean, they are what they are. They're a running football team, and they can throw it when they have to. And defensively, they're hard nosed and physical. And I mean, I think they're one of the best special teams teams that we've played all year long. I mean, they're an extremely well prepared group. You can see that in the games that we've watched, and it's going to be a 4-quarter battle. It's going to be an exciting game. I think it's going to be a game that comes down to, what team can take care of the football, what team can maybe make a couple of plays on special teams, and then, probably down the red zone. What are you able to do? Are you able to punch it in and for touchdowns or kick field goals? And so, it's going to be a good, hard-nosed football game, and we're excited about it.
Well, as a coach, you've done this before. You've been in this game. The week leading up to it, do you have an urge to try to have a lot of adjustments and try to fool a team, or do you just have to trust what you've done up to this point in the season?
Yeah, I mean, you're always going to try to make a plan and see what the other team does and try to think, what are they going to try to take away from you? I mean, that's each and every week, but yeah, I mean, we're all what we are at this point. I mean, you don't get to the state championship game, by accident, and you're going to, everybody's going to have a plan going into the game, but ultimately you're going to stick with what got you there. And, it's, the coaches got to do a great job of preparing the kids, but when that ball gets kicked off, it's a game that's won by players, and they've got to go out there and execute, and the coaches got to try to make adjustments during the game and help them out. But, ultimately it's just going to be, I think, it's going to come down to the team that makes the plays.
Well, and how important do you think it is, and I think this is huge, that y'all have been there? Like we talked about this freshman class. This is their third state championship game they're going to be playing in, back-to-back state championship games. I think that helps you as a team because you do know what to expect. You know the routine of coming to AT&T. You're not quite as wowed by it and such.
Yeah, I mean, I think logistically there's some things that there's maybe a comfort level there, or so to speak. But I mean, ultimately, when the ball gets kicked off, it's going to turn into a football game, and I mean, all that stuff's going to kind of fade away, and it's going to be two high school teams playing at a high level and playing a 48-minute ball game. So, I don't think that's going to have any bearing on who wins the game, and it's definitely not going to be any kind of deciding factor. But it helps some of our preparation, I would say, maybe a little bit. For us, but I don't think it has anything to do with who's going to win or lose this ball game.
Well, you just said something I think makes a great point. At some point, it just becomes a ball game, and I've always believed that the team that it just becomes a ball game quicker too. I think they're usually the one that ends up prevailing because they go through the motions and they get the adrenaline out, and yet they're still playing.
Yeah, certainly. The game's about execution. I mean, there's it's an exciting game. I think that you can't. We always talk to our players. You can't let emotion drive you. You got to let passion drive you. You got to let you got to let it turn into a game. You got to remember what you're out there to do, and you got to go execute and try to win plays. So that's going to be our plan. We're going to try to do what we always do, and go play Gunner Tiger football.
Texas Farm Bureau Insurance has protected fellow Texans with auto, home, health, and life insurance since 1952. With more than 260,000 square miles of land and 27 million people, that's a lot to cover. Whether you're wrangling cattle or wrangling kids, we're proud to protect Texans in all Texan ways of life.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Terry Bennett back here on the Class 3A Division II State Championship Preview Show. Before we go any further, I wanted to give a Gunter parent shout-out. As Ethan Sloan's mom says, there are a few words to appropriately explain the emotions a mother feels for her child preparing for a game like tomorrow. The early mornings, the late nights, the gym times, the endless film time, and so much more makes this time worth it. To see you and your brother win state on the same field in 2019 was truly the best, but now it's your time to add that bookend ring to your resume. Go enjoy that big stage, son. Trust your training, and when the whistle blows, leave it all out there to finish it. Love you 8, your biggest fan, Mom. And Stacy and her family are the reasons why, or one of the reasons why, Grant and I love what we do with Sideline to Sideline. We met them through the show. They've been absolutely wonderful. It's the same thing with the Franklin families, Walter Commander in that group, with Brock, Brett Lee, all the people that listen to us and give us a hard time when our picks are wrong or get mad at us when we pick against them. They're the reason that the shows are so awesome. They're the reason why we do what we're doing with this show here. And so we do appreciate her doing the shout-out. We have plenty of those coming down the line in the rest of these games, and they're a fun way to connect the fact that, you know, we forget that these aren't just uniforms. These are kids who have hopes and dreams of winning this big game, and it's not just us talking about them, it's them playing, and we do appreciate all of them. All right, so now we're going to do Road to States. We're going to tell you how these two teams got here. Chris Daly's going to give his picks, and then we're going to start talking with Grant and Matt and Coach X. And we'll do all that when we come back right here on the Class 3A Division II State Championship Preview Show on the LSG Sports Network.
This show is brought to you by the book, All I Need to Know I Learned from My Texas High School Football Coach. A handbook of wisdom for parents, young people, and yes, even coaches. Head over to www.learnedfromcoach.com and order your copy to support sharing the stories of these great coaches and leaders. That's learnedfromcoach.com.
Hi, this is Chris Daly. You know me from Lone Star Gridiron, but you may also know me from Board Game Legends. That's right. 2018, we came out with the game Friday Night Legends, in which originally it was just Texas high school football teams that you could play against each other in this board game based on their real stats. So you could take the 1983 Dangerfield team and you could play them against Johnny Manziel's Kerrville Tivy team, or maybe that great 2015 Katy Tigers team. Whichever teams you want, you can play. It's a great board game. It has expanded now and covers the entire country. In fact, we just had some German teams added to the thing because Germany, there's a lot of U.S. military bases, so there's a lot of U.S. schools there, and they play high school football. So weirdly enough, we have international high school football teams now in that game. But what we like to do is play these state championships using Friday Night Legends. We just didn't have time this time around because it's been a very busy, very wonderful Texas high school football season. So instead, I'm going to tell you what I think would happen if we had played these games. All right? And rest assured, within a week of state championship being over, all of these teams that have appeared at the 2022 UIL State Championship football games, all of these teams will be available for Friday Night Legends. You can get them at FridayNightLegends.com or BoardGameLegends.com. 3A Division II, Gunter versus Poth. Gunter sitting at 15-0, Poth sitting at 14-1. This is a tough one for me. Gunter has been one of these teams that they run up against Canadian all the time. Either Canadian makes it through and wins the state championship, or Gunter makes it through and wins the state championship, or loses the state championship, as it were sometimes. But this time, I think I go with Gunter. I think they're the ones who pull this one off.
Hey, football fans, Christmas is right around the corner. We have the perfect gift for your high school football fan in your life. Friday Night Legends, the board game. With Friday Night Legends, you can play the greatest high school teams of all time against each other based on their real stats. That means you can play the 1989 Odessa Permian Panthers of Friday Night Lights fame against the 2017 Mater Day team and really see who's the better team. Or what about Peyton Manning's Newman High School in New Orleans against Trevor Lawrence's Cartersville, Georgia team? There are thousands of teams in the library from all over the United States. Get your copy of Friday Night Legends at BoardGameLegends.com and be the hero of Christmas morning.
Terry Bennett back here on the Class 3A Division II State Championship preview show. Now we're going to hear from Grant of Sideline to Sideline, Coach X of Sideline to Sideline, and award-winning sports writer Matt Diggs. He's a guy that's been covering the sport as long as I have. We've had shows before in DFW, and we used to do shows as guests for each other back when we didn't even call them podcasts yet. We were still calling them web radio, webisodes, all those crazy names. But I'll just play these in succession. Basically, I sat and recorded with each one of them their picks for every game, and so here are those three picking for Poth versus Gunner, and then we'll finish the show with Road to the State for both teams. First up is Grant Goodwin of Sideline to Sideline. All right, Grant, here we go. Class 3A Division II. We've got Gunner. We've got Poth. We've got a matchup of two teams, and you can say this about every team, but you've got a tell of the tape of two teams. Both of them score in the 40s. Both of them hold their defensive or hold the opponents under 10. Both of them have played a decent record, though oddly enough, Gunner has opponent record is way better than Poth's, and that's weird because we've all talked about Gunner kind of having a not because of bad scheduling. They thought they scheduled a good non-district schedule, but other than Brock, it kind of fell apart. What are your thoughts on this one?
Man, I think it's going to be a great game. Man, Gunner's coming off just that gutsy win over Canadian, where Canadian just at times had their way with Gunner up front, right?
Yes.
But Gunner just, they fought the good fight for 4 quarters, just chipping away as much as they could. Couldn't do a lot. And then Ivy Hellman's big-time catch with, 12 seconds, 19 seconds left in the game to come up with the win. That was just huge. Got a good look at this Harmony Poth game as well online while I was watching some of the Gunner game. And I'll tell you what, I was very impressed by the size and physicality of the Pirates. And Matthew Bunn for Poth, that kid is fast, dude. Yep. I'm going to say right now, he's got some of that what everybody calls East Texas speed.
I agree 100% on that.
I mean, that kid can go.
I agree.
Zane Rabb is great at quarterback.
And what they did, and I know Harmony wasn't the defensive juggernaut, but Harmony was the hot team, and they had held Newton. And for Poth to run for almost 400 yards against them. And you talk about it, Bunn's that speed neutralizer that's the one advantage I think Gunner has. And I think the Canadian game might have been the best thing that happened to Gunner because I think Canadian, while they don't necessarily do things scheme-wise the same, they're built kind of like Poth is. Poth's a little bit bigger. And I think that when Gunner sees Canadian and get pushed around, I think that helps them make the adjustments. You talk about all the time that sometimes the teams that struggle in that semifinal, that makes them better in that state championship game. Yep. That if they'd have blown Canadian out by 4 touchdowns, they might not have seen some of the things that they're going to have to adjust. Because I think, and we said this off there, I think this is a perfect example of can the power of Poth get their hands on the Gunner defensive line and linebackers. If they can, Gunner's going to need to score 40 to win. If they can't, I think Gunner can win comfortably. I think Gunner's the favorite, but I think Poth is, definitely has a chance in this one.
Oh, yeah, they do. Look, Gunner, they were a little anemic offensively last week. Canadian was too, but a lot of it was very foggy in Abilene, and you could not, from the press box, you could not see the ball on any kicks, like punts or kickoffs or anything, any passes. Neither team could really track down the ball, the receivers. So I think Gunner's offense was limited last week because of the weather. So anybody that has any inklings that Gunner's offense is just a little anemic and Poth is going to take full advantage of that, needs to rethink it because Gunner with Ethan Sloan, Ashton Bennett, Kenan Lindbergh, Ivy Hellman, all those guys are potential All-State players, and then Walker Overman at quarterback's been really good, kind of switch between quarterbacks sometimes. So they're going to really test this Poth defense. Now, this Poth defense we saw last week against Harmony is good enough to probably withstand a lot of what Gunner's going to throw at them. But at the end of the day, I think this is a close ball game once again. Rightfully so. It is a state championship game. But I do like Gunner because I think outside of Matthew Bunn and Zane Rabb for Poth, I think Gunner just has a few more playmakers that can take it to the house from any point, any down or any position on the field.
Yeah, I look back at that second playoff game for Poth. A Boiling team that is nowhere near as athletic as Gunner gave them all types of fits, scored 34 on them. I think they had 360 yards on it. And then I go back in my mind to Ethan Sloan last year in that Franklin loss, but at times, as fast and as athletic as Franklin is, he was literally tearing them up on those little slot routes and the inside the safety linebackers. They were just killing them. We haven't seen Gunner do that as much this year, but I think that's kind of been their idea. Let's just get through these games and win. And I hate to use the old water boy cliche of Dan Fouts said, but it's the last game. There's nothing holding back at this point. I think everybody on both these teams, because both teams have guys that play both ways. Yeah. Y'all just better be ready to play 75 snaps and you can rest for the rest of the year.
Yeah. Can I make the statement here, though? I underestimated Poth all year.
I think I did, too.
I think we both did. I think as a show, sideline to sideline, we probably did, and we should have gotten down to Poth to see a game this year, but now we're believers.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, you brought it up, though, after that Shiner loss, how, let's keep an eye on them. But, again, part of it's also where they're at in their district wasn't the strongest. And so we sometimes discount those teams because of who they play and not realize it doesn't matter who they were playing that night. They were still going to put 40 or 50 on them.
Yeah.
Thanks to Grant for doing this, and just thanks to Grant for being a co-host for the last 15 years. Sideline to sideline, we have a blast talking 4A and 3A, and in 2023 we'll be talking 2A. And one of our bits, one of our segments is Coach X. If you don't know, Coach X is a real coach. He coaches in high school here in Texas. He gives us humorous picks and takes each and every week on our show. And one of his long-running bits is his hate for Gunter. He claims that when he was a child at a grocery store in Gunter, he was giving cereal with roaches in it. We still don't even know if that's true. But he's always a fun guy to have do the takes and the picks. And he's also fun to do with these segments at the end of the year where I actually call and talk to him. So here is Coach X and his odd take on the state championship game. All right, Coach X, Class 3A Division II Gunner versus Poth. It's funny because I have to do all these, peeling back the layers of how we do these shows. You and I are recording all the ones you're doing at once, and I have to remember that because sometimes our conversations will carry over because you've been talking about apps and applications and HBO app and all that. And I actually wanted to ask you in the last show, what are your thoughts on how they're doing it now? Like HBO is starting to pull shows off their catalog so that they don't have to pay residuals. But isn't that the whole point of why we're supposed to have these apps, so we could have these shows that we could go back to at any time we wanted?
On demand means on demand, which means I want what I want when I want it. And the thing that really pissed me off is because I was talking to my son and my daughter about this show that they would really like. I watch it all the time. And so I'll go to HBO. I used to come on HBO all the freaking time when I was in high school and younger. And I loved it. And I told my kids, I was like, we're going to watch this, and you guys are going to laugh. It's so funny. You don't even have to be able to talk to understand it. And I went to my HBO app, and I typed in Mr. Bean, and he's not on there. Oh, dude, I was so mad. Mr. Bean, what streaming service is he on? And he should be on HBO because his show used to be on HBO. And if it's not on HBO, where the hell is it?
It's on Hulu.
Bring back Mr. Bean.
It's on Hulu.
I don't have that, all right? I got regular TV, and I used to have HBO on my thing, and then they pulled that, and then you had to get the app, so then we got AT&T so we could have it for free, and now we got it on my phone, and so I want to watch it, and I guess my mom has Hulu. I could probably just steal hers, but I don't know, but it's just put it on HBO. Bring back Mr. Bean. Mr. Bean rocked. He's awesome.
You know, that's one of those. Mr. Bean is one of those that has become such a cultural icon. And Rowan Atkinson, of course, he had done Blackadder and other things. But people don't realize that Mr. Bean, the show itself, only was 1 year, and it was like 15 episodes. And he only literally played Mr. Bean for like 48 minutes of actual screen time. It's crazy to think that, because when you think of Rowan Atkins, you think of Mr. Bean.
Dude, he was a genius. I remember he shows up in Hot Shots Part 2.
Yes, he does.
Like, Mr. Bean is in this movie. Oh my God! And he talked, and I was like, he's not supposed to do that. But I loved his nemesis, the three-wheeled car.
Yes.
And he would just run. Oh man, it was so funny. So he's on. You said Hulu.
Hulu, and I'll get you Grant's login here later. Now let's talk Poth versus Gunner.
Nah, good deal. Everybody's favorite team, Poth.
Yes, you have the running rivalry with Gunner, but I think you would at least admit that in this game, Gunner would be a heavy favorite.
No, I won't do that. I actually ate a bowl of crap in preparation for this right here. I mean, they should be. They win. Gunner wins a lot. You know, as much as I don't like them to win, they win a lot. So yeah, they're the favorite, and people don't even know the correct pronunciation of Poth. You know, I have some coaches in our office call it Poth, which I like to roll into a Star Wars joke of Poth. But
go ahead.
Is it Poth or is it Poth?
It's Poth.
Are you sure?
I don't know. That's one of those things that you're told something your whole life, and then you go to the town, you know, and they're completely like, wait, we've never called ourselves that. So I've always been told it's like both, but with a P, so Poth.
All right, well, that's what I was saying. But 1 year, it was looking like we were going to play Raul Vista in the playoffs, and you know, everybody where I coach at had never heard of that, and I actually grew up pretty close to Raul Vista, so I kept saying Raul Vista. And they're like, it's Rio. I was like, no, it's not. It's Raul Vista, just like Nevada Community.
Yes, Nevada.
They said, you know, it's Nevada. I was like, no, dude, it's Nevada Community. Like, no, it's not. Like, no, it is. Anyway, Poth is good.
Oh yeah, they are.
They all. I went to, you know, I remember putting this in a Coach X write up one time. Like I was coaching down there around San Antonio 1 year, and they were awful. Like because we weren't very good, and it was in a realignment year, and the AD was like, "Who do you want to play?" And like 3 out of the 6 coaches on our staff were like, Poth. We want to play Poth. Now, and if the school that I was at played Poth, it would be like report the score to ESPN, like how bad, like they would like outside the lines, and Bob Lee would come down and talk about how bad Poth beat this other school. Because I looked them up, and they had like 8 shutouts in the year, and I know Region 4 was down this year, especially when you took out Franklin up to Division I, and East Bernard wasn't their typical self, and then Lexington getting beat in the first round of the playoffs was pretty shocking. Yeah. So that, you know, but you shut out 8 teams. I don't care if you're playing JV teams. Somebody's usually going to score on a reverse or halfback pass or something like that, you know, just to score so they don't get shut out, or kick a field goal just to say they didn't get shut out. So you shut 8 people out in the course of 15 games. I mean, you can play defense. And then didn't Shiner only beat them by like a point, or Refugio or somebody only beat them by a point?
Shiner, it was 22-21, and if I'm not mistaken, if I remember right, Shiner scored with seconds left to seal the win.
Yeah, so Poth is obviously pretty good, and I know Shiner probably wasn't as good as they were the last couple of years. Shiner's still daggone stout, and you know, even in their blonde years, they're still pretty good. Although I like the full Shiner more than I like the Shiner blonde. So I mean, and you know, I remember last year when Gunner was playing Franklin, and I was like, "Oh, Gunner will do this, Gunner will do this." And Franklin just went in there and said, "We're going to rush for a quarter of a mile against y'all," and they did it. So I haven't really seen a lot of Poth other than just some scores and some highlights now and then. I have seen quite a bit of Gunner.
Whether you want to or not.
Whether I want to or not. Well, because you and Terry you and Grant keep putting them on the daggum sheet every week, even though they play the region other than Holiday, and I guess Bell's pretty good. But other than that, it's like Gunner and the Seven Dwarfs in region in their district. Like, hey, let's watch the Gunner and Lone Oak. No, I don't want to, but we had to. So anyway, Gunner's pretty good. The Sloan kid can play. And you're welcome, Mom. His mom, not my mom. But, I never, ever, ever, ever have picked Gunner.
That's not true.
What?
You picked Gunner one time this year when they had the walkabout in the first round, and you didn't get red, so you slid past that. I somehow missed that on the run sheet, and you picked Gunner that game. It's like the Kennedy files.
I picked Gunner versus nobody. So, yeah, I guess I did pick that. Well, you can Gunner versus bye or Gunner versus off. So Gunner beat off, but I gotta go with. I'm going with the Pirates. Okay. The non-peg leg version of the Pirate, which I've always wondered. Like, when you ride down like to a school that is the Pirate, and they always have that foot and the little dot for the peg leg.
Yeah.
Like, couldn't you whip that Pirate a lot easier than like a two-legged man?
I mean, I would think I would keep running to the edge. There's no way a Pirate defensive end with a peg leg could set the edge every play.
Or just run into a circle. Just run in a circle away from the peg leg. I mean, there's no way his agility is good enough to cut off the peg.
Well, what about like on a grass surface after it's rained? He might just sink right in.
Yeah, and he's always got that big boot. Like, there's no way Pirates were wearing those big old boots. But I guess everybody wore big boots back then, or buckled shoes and a buckle hat. Why was a buckle so big back then?
If I was a Pirate and I had a peg leg, I guess if I just had a peg leg. Well, if I had a peg leg, I'd want to be a Pirate. But I would go Inspector Gadget, where that leg could be whatever I needed to be at that moment.
But I don't think in Pirate times they had the Inspector Gadget technology. Like, I think you'd have been in trouble with that.
I don't think we have the Inspector Gadget technology now, to be fair.
The military has it, man. They just don't let us know. Like, like the military gets everything before we do, like the internet and Pirate legs.
So there's a guy. There's a guy right now at Fort Penning. He's like bouncing all over because the spring is too far up, and so he's like 20 feet in the air, going, "Get me down."
Yeah, that's right. And if you ever see him, he just Men in Black's, the thing with the Ray-Bans, and it's just gone. Like, you don't know what you saw. And then there's that alien with the skin. It's like it's a worm. I'm gonna stick with Pope though, because that's how much I don't like Gunner.
And now here is Matt Diggs, award-winning sports writer, giving his take. All right, Matt, we'll pull back the curtains here and let everybody in on the secret. You and I are literally recording every one of these that people are hearing in different shows at the same time. And so I get to carry over a conversation that if they don't listen to it, they might not understand. But you were talking about teams and hitting that glass ceiling and how hard it is to break through. Well, in this game, we actually finally had one breakthrough. Gunner's been there, 14-0, but Poth, the Pirates, finally break that region final and state semifinal glass ceiling that's kind of held them out, and they're in the playoffs. Or in the state championship game. I think this has all the makings for a secret, really, really good game.
It might, and I look at Poth, and if you asked me a couple weeks ago, where is Poth on the map, I probably couldn't have told you. But I have to do my research for these kinds of things, and I was kind of traveling. Okay, a little south of San Antonio. Okay, there's Poth. Oh, there's Falls City right there. Okay, so this is a team that has been around, and I think there's something to be said for that. The observation of your neighbors playing well and getting to this point. Obviously Falls City knocking off Martin. In my opinion, when I'm doing my statewide picks, it's hard for me to pick against teams like Falls City and some of these blue bloods early on. And I'm looking at these computer polls picking against Falls City by 10, 14. I'm like, no, I'm taking Falls City at least for a while until they get to that point where, I think that they're going to be be just completely overmatched by their opponent. And that kind of formula works, especially when you don't get to really see these fans. I know you guys at Sideline to Sideline will go and hang out and see some of these smaller schools and get a chance to sample the state, as it were. But for us big city riders, kind of a thing, we don't get a chance to see some of the smaller schools, which is our bad, as it were. We're missing out as far as that goes. So we're glad that Poth has made it. But I look at Gunner, and I actually got into a little debate, and I want you to let me know if you think I'm wrong with this. I think if we got on Madden, I love to have my hypothetical Madden games, we put last year's Gunner team against this year's Gunner team. I think last year's Gunner team is probably 2 scores better than this Gunners team, yet I think this Gunner team has a way better chance of winning state than last year's Gunners team.
All right, so I don't agree with you on the first point. I think this year's defense is better. I think last year's offense is better, more consistent. I agree with that. Walker Overman has seemed to have stepped in now through the playoffs and kind of settled down the passing game, but at times the passing game was a little bit off. But you still got Cannon Lindbergh there, wide receiver, and you've got Ethan Sloan, but I think, and Ivy Hellman and Ashton Bennett and all these players. But I think what you're missing, or not really missing, but not knowing, is they went more defensive heavy with these guys. Ethan Sloan didn't have 2,000 yards this year and 45 touchdowns like he could have. He was playing more on the defensive side. They were getting more snaps, especially like against Brock and such. And so I think last year's offense is more consistent, but I actually think this team overall this year might be a little better. But I do agree with you no matter what. I do think definitely this is a better matchup for them than Franklin was.
And I might have been a little bit, jaded because I saw the Brock game. That's like my introduction to them. And I saw them need special teams play, and then Brock kind of figured it out in the second half, and they had to hold on in that game. And I think if that game would have been a 60-minute game, Brock might have got 30 points on Gunner and able to get there. So I see Brock, and then I saw how Brock struggled against Paradise and even Whitesboro at times, especially in the first half of their playoff game. So I really wonder about that, because then I look at that Bells game, and then I kind of calibrate that with Whitesboro and how that did. And I just don't see that this Gunter team is, they were running away with them. And I know you can look at Holiday in the playoffs and go, okay, maybe they're figuring it out. Maybe they're getting going. But then the Canadian game, I'm very worried about this Gunter squad in that hypothetical game. Yeah, their defense is great, but they haven't been playing anybody. When you're looking at, they beat Palmer and Jacksboro, that's not keeping my heart warm as your the kind of teams that you're playing. Their schedule, and it's not their fault. That's kind of what I was alluding to, and the fact that I like their run better is just a lot. Franklin moved up. A lot of the matchup issues that they had, they were always better than everybody in Region 2 as it was. But I feel like they came back a little bit down. The fact that Bells again was a little bit more competitive against them this year, and the fact that Canadian was even more competitive. I know Canadian's a good team, but we're an extra point away from either having a playoff game or not a playoff, an overtime game, or them not even making the playoffs with that great drive. And that does show a little bit of mettle for Gunner. But again, this Gunner team, for me, they're a little bit more vulnerable, even though I think they're a little bit more of a favorite. I just don't see this Gunner team as the kind of team that can absolutely blow a team away. Their defense might be better, but if their offense can't consistently put up the kind of points that they need, that puts them at an upset risk, especially with Poth and their ability to potentially get some points on the board. I think what they did against Harmony is Region 3 versus Region 4. My justification for taking Harmony last week was that I felt that Harmony coming out of Region 3 had seen a lot better teams. And Poth just went right through them without much problem. And so if Poth has enough of an offensive acumen to get on the board against Gunter and be consistent there, I'm worried about Gunter in this game.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like I agree with you. I kind of thought Harmony. I also kind of thought Harmony. They had the hot hand. You tend to see there's usually one team that kind of sneaks through like that. And I like you, was impressed by what the Pirates offense did. I figured their defense would hold Harmony. Harmony's really young. Boston Seahorn's going to be a stud next year, and they might be 1 year early to the party, and that's nothing but learning. But for this game, I don't know, man. I just don't think I don't think Poth matches up with Gunner at all. I think that the speed and athleticism of Gunner is going to give Poth a ton of problems because they have that speed and athleticism, but they're also just a really good football team. And whether you compare them to last year's football team or this year's, and I think that's a fun comparison. I love doing that kind of stuff. It's just this year's team versus this year's Poth team. I don't think Poth this year stays within 3 touchdowns of Gunner last year. I think that they can stay within 3 touchdowns this year, but I don't know. There's certain teams, and we joke about we're tired of certain teams coming back, and Gunner was back, back to back possibly, but they lost last year. But some teams, they just feel like that's where it ends. They're going to win state. No matter what we think, no matter who they play, there's going to be tough, close games. There's going to be blowouts. But at the end of the day, they're not stopping till they win state. And Gunner just feels like that this year.
I mean, absolutely. My argument is more that I think Gunter is just not where they were last year, and that scares me in and of itself.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Not against necessarily that Poth, they can't beat Poth, but I just worry about a team that isn't as good as they were last year, and maybe they are. Maybe they're going to come out there and win 48-0 and just be like, well, what do you think about that, Diggs? And I'm just going to have to, tell your sideline to sideline, fan club, sorry about it. Y'all are right about this. But again, Gunter, if I look at all of these games, I think that Gunner might on paper be the biggest favorite of the 12, even going into the six-man arena. I think they might be that big of a favorite. But at that same time, I don't know that they're going to win the biggest point margin out of all of these 12 games, just because I'm a little bit concerned that they're riding on their legacy more than what their actual output is. All that being said, they're a favorite. They're a big favorite. They would have to have a lot go against them to lose this game. I just think that I'm a little bit concerned if Poth figures out a little bit of something and that y'all are going to figure out that this Gunter team is not as good as you think a Gunter squad in a state championship should be. There is a little bit of concern for me. But again, Gunter, big favorite, at least 2 scores in my eyes.
Hey, gang, Christmas is just around the corner, and I have the perfect gifts for the sports fan and game lover in your family. Board Game Legends, yes, the company that brought you Friday Night Legends, has a whole host of very cool games. Friday Night Legends allows you to play Texas high school football teams against each other based on their real stats. You can play the state champion Shiner Comanches against the state champion Mart Panthers, or perhaps one of the famous state championship Katy Tigers squads going up against Kyler Murray's Allen State Championship team. You name it, it's limitless who you can play. In addition, we also have Saturday Legends. It does the exact same thing for college football. So if you want the Convicts versus the Catholics, that famous game, Lou Holtz's Notre Dame Fighting Irish against Jimmy Johnson's Miami Hurricanes, you can play that. It is limitless, the number of matchups you can have in that game too. But before you think it's all football, Board Game Legends also has a game called Basketball Legends. In this one board game, you can play high school basketball. You can play college basketball. You can play professional basketball. You can play WNBA. You can play world basketball. You name it. In our library, we have teams for every type of basketball, all in one game. To learn about the games and order these in time for Christmas, go to BoardGameLegends.com.
Terry Bennett back here on the final segment of the Class 3A Division II State Championship Showdown, Gunner versus Poth. And the reason we're putting Road to the States at the end on this one is I wanted a chance to spotlight NETSN.live. a website that covers Northeast Texas sports, Chapel Hill football out of Tyler. They had a great year, losing last week in the state semifinals. And Bret and the crew are helping us with these Road to the States. We try to get as many voices as we can in these shows, just so it's just not me. And I really do appreciate the work that those guys did. And so we're going to end this show with their Road to the States for both Gunter and for Poth. I do appreciate everybody that has tuned in this year. We've done over 200 shows, if not actually more. I think it's 250 for the 2022 season alone. And next year, we want to do more. We love talking high school football. We love our fans. We love the people that argue with us as much as they love us. But we just appreciate everybody. We want everybody to have safe travels if they're going to the games. Have safe travels and very happy holidays. And as we end the show, here is Road to the State for Gunter and Poth on the LSG Sports Network.
Thanks, Terry. Road to the State continues here as we talk about the Poth Pirates. Poth comes in at 14-1 in the state game against Gunter, and we'll just look over their schedule, kind of how they got here. Some big games for them. The only loss on their schedule is to a Shiner club, and we all know how good Shiner was this year as they battled with Refugio in that Region 4, 2A Division 1, and Dalton Brooks and company were able to knock them off 21-20. But minus that 1-point loss, Poth is unscathed. They've had 7 shutouts this year, and that's pretty impressive. They've shut out teams like Falls City, Schulenburg, South San Antonio West, Nixon Smiley, and Natalia, Karnes City. In the playoffs, they shut out George West 65-0 in the first round. And since then, they've still just continued to roll. They knocked off the Cinderella story of the playoffs, Harmony, last week, 51-28 to reach the state game. And guys, Gunter's the favorite, but Poth no slouch. What do y'all think about Poth and their chances?
Poth is a tough team. They got a really strong runner. They love to pass the ball too. Their offense, it's weird. It's like they're not doing anything special on offense, but for some reason, they find guys who are just wide open at times. I'm not even sure how that keeps happening, but they're clearly confusing defenses. And I don't know, maybe it's because the defense is so afraid of the run that they come up front and they lead those receivers by themselves one-on-one. But man, they got a quarterback with a big arm. They got a tailback with some strong legs. Poth is going to be hard to beat. And they, on defense, they put hats on people. They put hats on people, man. They got some big hitters on defense. So, yeah, Poth is going to be tough to beat. Absolutely.
You know, I'm looking at the matchup here, and I like it. You know, you have a Gunter team that put up 85 points, and, of course, you have a Poth team that had 7 shutouts. So, you know, what's going to break first? Is the defense or the offense going to break first? You're placing against 2 immovable objects. You got an immovable object here. You know, what's going to happen? Like this is a matchup between 2 teams that hadn't lost but 1 game between these 2. So the matchup is set there. Like I said before, you beat somebody 65-0, 45-0. Your defense is playing solid. Just looking at some tape here against Harmony, they beat Harmony. You know, the Harmony was on a roll. Like I said, the Cinderella team, they came out, they took care of business, and Harmony was a favorite in a lot of people's opinions and polls as well. A lot of people in Texan Live, they picked Harmony for some, you know, for that reason alone because of the week before. So nonetheless, I like the matchup. I think it's going to be a pretty good one. I wouldn't be surprised if this game goes to like field goals only. But, you know, I think Poth is capable of stopping Gunter, and we shall see. This is going to be a primetime matchup as well. Like I said, 2 teams, only 1 loss between them, you know, and this is going to be interesting.
Yeah, I like this matchup, Corey. It's going to be one of the most highly contested of the weekend. You've got Gunter, like you said, that they've put up numerous points. But then on the other hand, Poth has put up some big points as well. They beat South San Antonio West 77-0. So they're also have been able to put up points. So both teams have shown that they can play great defense, and both teams have shown where they can play great offense. So I don't know if either team has a weak point. At this point, all the teams left are really good. So you don't beat a Harmony team like they did 51-28 and not be a good team, because Harmony was on a roll. We talked about them a lot and how they hit the peak right there at the playoff time. They started rolling and just knocking people off left and right. We're probably the underdog in most, if not all, of the playoff games they were involved in. And, we talked a little bit to our colleague Kyle, and he was so impressed with Poth. They were all over Boston Seahorn last week in the backfield. They got a good pass rush. So don't be surprised if they put some pressure on Gunter up front. And this could be a great game. Road to the state continues, and we talked today about Gunter. And guys, this Gunter team at 15-0 is one to be reckoned with. Just some highlights, some games that they had this year. They went through district play and only allowed 35 points, and those were to Bells and Howe. They each, and then the rest of the games, they didn't give up a single point. They beat Lone Oak 85-0, Leonard 56-0, and Blue Ridge 49-0. Pretty impressive for Gunter there in their district play. A couple of non-district games to look at here is they beat Brock, which is still alive, in the state title game as well. In another classification, you have 21-16. They also beat a East Texas Power Gladewater. They're down this year, but they've been predominantly good, 59-7. Of course, we want to bring up their last opponent, which was probably their toughest. Their rival from other region is Canadian. Won that game 21-20. Guys, this Gunter team is on a mission right now, and they've got a tough Poth team coming up. What do y'all think about this matchup?
I absolutely love it. Poth, like we've mentioned it before, Poth is the darling of the Cinderella coming in, but Gunter is the main guys that's been here before. I think Gunter's going to have an easier time in this championship game. They're led by Luke Dodge, who's their quarterback, and they have a nice balanced attack, nice good run, good pass. 15-0, 5-0 in district. That means something, and of course they've been here before. And I don't think they're going to have a problem with Poth.
Yeah, Corey, I agree with you there. Their passing attack is just one of beauty. That ball that they throw, that spiral they throw, is just floats in the air sometimes, and it always lands where where you want it to go, and not to take away from the running game, because I've watched them play here against Canadian, and the way they run the football, they're very aggressive. They got a lot of speed and agility, so Gunter is definitely going to be a team to be reckoned with.
Yeah, I like this matchup. It's one of the ones that I look forward to. It's one of those that David versus Goliath, like y'all mentioned. Gunter coming in, the big favorite. Poth coming in, themselves knocking off the Cinderella Harmony in the semifinals. Now they're kind of towards the Cinderella story to make it here. So some people are putting the Canadian Gunter matchup as the state game. So Gunter can't look past Poth, but they've got a pretty good shot at taking the title.
True. I mean, you got to look at this though. They put up 85-0 against Lone Oak in the year. You outscore somebody 85-0 like that. That's almost like a year. Yeah. 85. That's pretty bad. Then in the playoffs, you got one forfeit. They beat Jacksboro 48-7. They beat Palmer 40-6, and they beat Holiday 31-7. So by the fourth round in the playoffs, they've only given up a total of 20 points. And then they had a rough time against Canadian. They did beat Canadian 21-20. And you already know my barely win theory. You barely beat an opponent 1 week. Can you beat them the next? Or can you beat the next opponent the next week? So I don't know. Poth may pose a threat, But like I said, I'm going with Gunter. They're 15-0. They just know how to win football games, and I think that's what we're looking at right now.
Now, I will say, Corey, that during the Canadian game, there was a little fog on the field, so maybe that slowed them up a little bit. I'm not sure. They were still out there throwing the football as if there was no fog or no kind of bad weather at all. So I do like your barely win theory. It may come into effect here, but who knows? We'll see. It's a big matchup. So,
Yeah,
I mean, they're playing on the this time, so it's not going to matter.
yeah, because the conditions are going to be a little bit clearer this time in the in AT&T Stadium in Jerry's World. But good teams can play in any conditions, whether it be fog, rain, sleet, snow, inside the dome. Good ball transfers. It goes wherever you go. So if they show up to play against Post, I think they'll have no problems. Post got to hope that Gunner makes mistakes and lets him in this game. So I think Gunner's got a great chance to go all the way and take the state championship. Back to you. Back to you, Corey. What you got?
I was just going to say defense travels. I didn't mean to cut anybody off.
No, you're good. You're good. Yeah, defense definitely does travel. I like that. And then, a good offense never hurts.
No, not at all.
All right, back to you, Terry.